Hello, this is the Newborn Nurse Podcast, and I'm your host, Rachel Ramsey, RN, BSN. This podcast is for expectant and new mothers and families, and we are here to share with you a list of incredible newborn resources, services, professionals, and tips and tricks. We hope the info on this podcast informs you, helps you, and most of all, eases any anxieties, gives you confidence, and empowers you to be the best parent possible. Knowledge really is power, and we are here to inform and guide you through this season with your new baby. I am your host, Rachel Ramsey. I am a registered nurse and certified postpartum doula. I have 17 years of professional neonatal and maternal nursing experience and 5 years as the owner of the Newborn Nurse, a Nashville-based service that provides in-home care and newborn education to new families. I hope this podcast helps each of you in some big or small way. Biggest of congratulations and thanks for listening. You've got this, Mama, and we are here for you. As a reminder, any information you hear on this podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Please see the full disclaimer on our website for more details. Website is listed in show notes. Hey guys, this is Rachel back from the Newborn Nurse, and today I have a really amazing, sweet, and special guest. Her name is Ali Levine. She is a trauma-informed certified breathwork coach. And I met her about a year ago on a local TV station. We both had a segment back to back and met and just really clicked and bonded. And I would love to speak to her today. She has an amazing background. She's also a somatics instructor. She was a celebrity stylist in Hollywood for over 15 years. And her mission is to help women, especially mothers, she is a mother, transform from merely surviving to truly thriving. She loves to help moms shift their stress and anxiety to peace, clarity, and vibrant living, and empower women to step confidently into the life they were created for. So that's kind of her background. So yeah, just let me know your credentials, everything you do, and how you got into breath work.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And so, hi, everyone. Yes, I am Ali Levine. I am a mama of three, a wife. And how I kind of got here into the breathwork world is kind of funny because, as Rachel mentioned, I was a celebrity stylist in Hollywood. We used to live in California. I lived there for over a decade before we moved to Tennessee. And God called me to move and set me apart. But before that happened, I was very much in the industry and I was living a very fast paced lifestyle. I think that's kind of putting it mildly, to be honest. I was working around the clock. I had no sets of boundaries. I lived to just please my clients. Anyone else who's a people pleaser out there, I am a recovering people pleaser. I ran around and did all the things. My nervous system was in a terrible fight or flight, maybe even at one point functional freeze. And I was just doing, and I was never breathing. And I was just honestly, I was running on fumes to the point where it got to a place where it was so toxic in my body. It was so toxic in my mind. It was honestly taking over my marriage. It was destroying relationships around me. And it became like this, like I went from loving my job and what I was doing to honestly this almost like resentment of like, what am I doing? Why am I so stuck? Why do I feel awful? And that's when God really called me out and told me, it was time for me to step away from the industry. It was time for me to heal and start to work on me. And to be transparent, I didn't listen when he called me out and told me. I was like, oh, I didn't hear that. And I kept going forward and kept pushing and exhausting myself and going to no end. As my dad says, burning the candle at both ends. I was surely doing that. And shortly after that, I just came to a place where I was in complete mental burnout. I felt overly anxious, overly stressed, and exhausted. I could not show up. And it just came to a place of this surrender of like, okay, my hands are up in the air. What do you want me to do, God? And God told me that I had a lot of healing work to do. And that's kind of how I landed here. And before I deeply landed in the healing space, I got pregnant with my first daughter. So a little go back in time. It's 2016. My husband sits me down for a conversation and says, I really want to start a family. I've been asking you for years. We moved out to California together. I followed you from New York. Like, let's finally do this. And I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I'm still waiting to see what happens with my career. And I'm trying to make room for this baby. And he's like, there's never going to be a right time. And I'm like, I know, but I still want to have like everything checked off first. And Obviously, any parents know that never happens. And so I share that because I was just so wanting to be in control of my life and wanting to decide when that was happening. And it just became to a point where Justin was like, okay, we need to figure this out because we want to become parents and we need to figure out how you're going to step into that. And honestly, I wasn't ready to step into it. And God just kind of said, I'm going to take over, which he did. And I got pregnant pretty quickly after we had that conversation. In 2017, I found out I was pregnant with my first daughter. That led me then to really step away from the industry because I needed to focus on my health and on being pregnant. And especially because I was already in that kind of burnout, I needed to really focus on my body and on my baby. And that's where kind of the transition of starting to share my journey online and content creation and all the things I was going through started to happen. And then I started to share more and more of what I was experiencing emotionally and spiritually and mentally of like, I didn't really get why I was in such a deep emotional place. And that was when God really started speaking to me about the fact that I was never feeling my emotions. I don't know if anyone else listening can relate, but I was so numbed out and I was so in go, go, go mode that I didn't feel, I didn't process, I didn't feel the emotions my husband was having with me when he was speaking to me about our marriage and wanting to really, move forward and have a family. I wasn't processing emotions from relationships and friends. I was just so wrapped up in my own stuff and in my client stuff that I numbed out. And also a little backstory. I lost my grandmother in 2013. I think that's important to share because when she passed away and she was like my person on this earth, I really decided to go full throttle into work and not deal with anything else emotionally and just put my head down and work. And hey, I can control that, right? And just move forward in life. And I think that is important to share because that really put me in the spin out mode of not feeling, of just going forward. So how I wound up in the breathwork space was that I was in a place of deep surrender. I was really, pregnant. I was like really needing to find some kind of let me get rid of this anxiety and this stress. That started out first kind of just with a little bit of mindset work and meditation. I was told to do a little bit of just deep breathing, but it wasn't really breath work until a little bit later. So what happened basically was I wanted to have a natural birth after doing all this starting healing work. I found a midwife. I found people who I felt like, okay, this is aligned for me. I'm going to have this beautiful natural birth. I had no idea God had other plans, and so did my daughter. I wound up in a C-section after 42 hours. I had to be transferred from the birth center. So imagine I'm in the birth center. I'm really, in the mindset of I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this baby here. I have everything set up for the birth center. And I think mentally it's all good. And she stops progressing around 6 centimeters. I'm almost 30 hours in. We think things are going to happen. And then she just stopped progressing. And it was like, whoa. And everything stopped. I remember in the room, it felt like everything stood still. And my midwife looked at me and said, I think we have to transfer. And off to the hospital we went. Luckily, in a non-emergency, got to the hospital. I continued to want to try to have a natural birth. So we kept trying. They put me on Pitocin, epidural, all the things. I went from being in such a natural place to just bright lights and kind of trauma and all people around me, and went from peace to just kind of chaos. I felt like the transfer, and my body was just still holding so tight and would not, give in, I guess, to allowing her to come through. And next thing you knew, they said, hey, look, we've been trying this, but we're at 42 hours now, and we got to make sure you're safe and she's safe. It's time to make the decision of a C-section. So I had the C-section. And I believe now, being a certified coach, that actual, physical C-section really disconnected me deeper from, my body and that process. And that is what unearthed the trauma that I was already holding from so many different life experiences that I wasn't feeling. So fast forward, after having Amelia in April of 2018, I came into very heavy postpartum depression and anxiety. And I started really realizing that there was no going back. There was no hitting the easy button to go forward. I was going to have to go through it and in it and really surrender to God the way He'd been calling me to for quite some time. And that's where breath work then started to really show up in my journey, because I needed to start to heal deeper inside of my body versus just thinking mindset work was going to take me through. And mindset work was still there and it was important, but I needed to start to holistically work on my body as well. And so I started learning how to do some deep breathing. I started learning how to also journal and rewire my thoughts and take captive my thoughts, cognitive therapy, all kinds of different things to walk through my emotions, because I realized I was, as I said, not feeling anything and I was numbing out, and those emotions were needing to come to the surface in order to really be able to start to heal. And it probably wasn't until about April of 2019, about a year later, when it was Amelia's first birthday, where I finally started to feel like a new version of me, and I was no longer in survival mode as a mom. And I was finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And even though I had no idea what my journey ahead was going to be, I was at least above water and I could start to breathe and be grateful for the space I was in. And that's kind of how it led. And then I know we'll get deeper into my next daughter's journey, where I really then chose to get certified and how that all played out.
I love it. I love your entire story. Hey everyone, this is Rachel from The Newborn Nurse. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you are learning some valuable and helpful information on this podcast. If you would like to learn even more, we have something new and exciting to tell you about. We have created our Newborn Care 101 online video course for first-time expectant parents or parents who want a refresher course in newborns. This course is taught by me, a neonatal newborn nurse and expert of 18 years and founder of The Newborn Nurse. It's so super important to make sure you are gathering your newborn information from a trusted and experienced source as you prepare for your baby. This course is a series of educational videos where you will learn everything you need to know about newborn care all in one spot without having to search and scroll all over the internet. You can take this course in the comfort of your own home and nursery with your own baby equipment and at your own pace. You can also rewatch the videos as many times as you would like with unlimited access to these videos for an entire year. Many of the families who have already taken this course have reached out to tell me how helpful it is to go back and be able to review these videos once their baby has arrived. In this course, you will learn swaddling, diapering, bathing, breastfeeding, bottle feeding, burping, cord care, how to use your breast pump and car seat, how to prevent mastitis, calm a fussy baby, and much, much more. You also get free printables, including a checklist of what to pack in your hospital bag, a must-haves product list for your baby registry, and the best part, you get free access to our Facebook online community group where you can meet other new moms and also have access to me, Rachel, for any newborn questions you have along your journey. The families who have taken this course already have raved about it and have felt it has been super helpful and allowed them to feel prepared, organized, ready, and knowledgeable about their newborn. For our podcast listeners, you can receive 10% off this course with coupon code, all caps, podcast, at the checkout. The link to purchase this course is in the show notes below. Thank you for being here and best wishes to you and your family. I hope you feel loved, supported, and empowered as a new parent. Thanks so much and have a great day. So with breath work, a lot of our parents who listen to this podcast, they're always looking for all the resources they can find. And breath work is such an easy, free, quick tool that you can use anywhere. Yes, that you can use anywhere to help ground and center. But just kind of taking a couple steps back, let's just talk about the basics. Let's talk about the importance of the breath, how it regulates us, and something you actually taught me, the benefits to not only the emotional and spiritual parts of us, but also the benefits to our physical body.
Absolutely. Yeah, so important. So the way we are actually designed, speaking of babies, to actually breathe and be in homeostasis, which is our rest and digest state of the body, the parasympathetic nervous system, we're breathing deep into our belly, into our chest, and out. That's how a baby breathes when they're born. And kids continue to breathe that way up until probably about 6, 7 years old, when then they start to actually take on that deeper stressed out nervous system like us adults all function on or don't function on. And so why it's so important for us to breathe that way is because it resets us to I really call heaven's frequency. It's that true gratitude state. It's that positivity that God gave us when we came into this world, right? God did not give us a spirit of fear. That is something we've learned and we take on. And so God brings you in this homeostasis of this rest and digest place. And what is that doing? That's regenerating your cells, that's regenerating your organs and sending more oxygen to your blood, and everything going on in the body. It's pumping more so that regeneration happens and cells are overturning and renewing is happening consistently. Your mitochondria, your gut health, all of that is being filled from your nervous system. Your immune system is being strengthened by you deep breathing every day. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but if you think about your nervous system as the operating system of your body, which it is, and you think about
Mm-hmm.
an operating system of a computer, of us sitting here on computers recording right now, if our computers are too full with our files, they don't work or they malfunction, right? Or they like slow down. That's the exact same thing that happens with our nervous system. If your nervous system is junked up with a bunch of stuff like old memories and even family generational stuff and all kinds of things, and you're not processing them and you're not releasing it, well, then your nervous system can't bring you back to homeostasis. And then you're consistently in this perpetual place of fight or flight and sometimes even a functional freeze. And what we don't realize is that we have an inner pharmacy inside of the body. Like this is the way God made us. And so when you're in homeostasis and in the parasympathetic, the body's releasing all these beautiful hormones. They're like, I'm in rest and digest. Everything's regenerating. I'm in gratitude. Everything's flowing. And then when we go in the opposite direction of that and we send fear, we have fight or flight and anxiety, well, now it's all these negative chemicals are being released. And it's like, oh, well, now there's, stress. And now the body is, tensing up. And now maybe I have inflammation from that. Or maybe I have brain fog. Now my clarity's gone. I've lost my energy. My sleep is off, and then eventually it leads to dis-ease, disease in the body, because we're literally disassociated from the homeostasis of the way we're designed. So it's actually quite necessary and important for us to understand that this conscious breathing is more than just, like you said, the emotional spiritual connection. That's a benefit and a bonus. But the way we function and thrive instead of surviving is this homeostasis and learning how to return to that space over and over again.
Wow, it's such an invaluable thing. Yeah, I was interested as we spoke the last time, just how many benefits that breath work does for the physical body. And like you said, gut health, even gut
Yes.
health. I just thought that
Gut
was
health,
really, really
immune
cool.
system, like stress, obviously, as everybody knows, right? It lowers your cortisol levels, it takes down your stress, it calms your anxiety, it brings more peace to the body. Like, and it honestly only takes 90 to 120 seconds for us to start to experience that, because science has shown us when we're doing our deep breathing and consciously breathing, the neuroreceptors in the back of our brain are actually created to shut off and allow the frontal lobe to start to come on. And what happens with that is then you go into essentially a higher consciousness, an elevated consciousness state, which also happens in meditation. You're calm and silent. And then that's being received in the body. And now the body feels safety. Well, once the body feels safety, guess what? It can start to send signals and say, we can start the healing process. We can start the release. We're no longer in this like tight, when you're fisting your hands, because that's how the body feels. The body feels like it's just stuck and it can't go. It's almost like when you're in a car and then snow, right? It's like you're hitting the gas and you're just like spinning out and you can't get out of that one spot because it's like icy or the snow's out of the way and you're like, okay, it's going, but it's not actually going. It's like, that's what your body's doing. It's stuck. It's like, I think it's working. I'm trying, but it's not actually working. No, we got to get back to homeostasis. We got to get back to it being calm so the body can start to send signals and work with each other and say, okay, now the gut's back to functioning, the inflammation can come down. It's been amazing for me personally to see with hundreds of my clients how, when they are doing this consistent breath work, how not only their stress and anxiety is lowering, but their inflammation is going down. I experienced the same thing in my journey, and their acne is going away, and like all these things that like nobody could explain why they had it in the first place, and now it's disappearing. And they're like, how? And I'm like, because your body knows how to heal. It's divinely made to heal. We're the one that's stopping the process. And when we bring ourselves back to that homeostasis, which I like to say, come home to yourself, come home to the way God divinely designed you, now you're going to start the healing process. Now you're going to let the body start to do what it was made to do.
Very cool. So now kind of caveating over to new mothers. There are lots of intense emotions surrounding new motherhood, birth, and postpartum. Can you tell us about breath work and how it can help regulate a new mom so she can best thrive with her newborn?
Yeah, I love that question. Absolutely. Well, I'll say, like, I wish someone had said this to me before I even went through the postpartum depression and anxiety journey. Because I remember, like, let me take you back, laying in bed in 2018, had my C-section, and I'm laying there and I'm in so much pain. I'm trying to nurse and be with my baby. I'm trying to not be in fight or flight and be anxious and stressed out. And I just feel dark because I feel like I can't do anything and I don't know how to show up for me and I don't know how to show up for my baby. And had I known that I could just lay there in bed and be present and do deep breathing, and that would regulate my baby as well to co-regulate with me, and she would go from being in a fussy state and crying because she's feeding off of my emotions, and she would start to calm, and maybe then she'd even start to nurse easier, and then we would be comfortable and present and peaceful in bed, even if I couldn't get out of bed to do something in that moment. And that would have changed, I believe, for me, the way I would have shown up and felt every day. But instead, I felt like I was in survival mode, which I feel like so many moms do. And we don't have to feel that way. It's going to be a new experience. Of course, you're a brand new mom. This is a brand new baby, and you basically feel like you're meeting a brand new person. That's how I felt. I was like, oh, new version of you. Like, had no idea. Nobody told me about meeting a new you. I knew I was meeting a new baby, but not a new me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's important to say for moms, but not to bring fear, but to bring awareness of, like, you get to regulate, you get to have this awareness that, okay, it's going to be tough at first, it's going to be a new adventure, but what if I leaned in and had gratitude in this moment? What if I leaned in and started to breathe and center and ground, so the baby is receiving that positivity and I'm receiving that positivity? And I was laying in bed and journaling out my feelings and being, aware and holding my thoughts captive of what I'm feeling, like all these different things that are sound so simple, but they're so important for our self-care and self-love. I wish I was doing from the beginning. Maybe that would have helped me in that postpartum depression and anxiety space that I was in. I had to hit rock bottom before I, got help. And so I would stress to other moms, like, don't wait to hit rock bottom. Don't wait to feel so dysregulated and so disconnected from you or your baby or both. Get the help beforehand, get set up and get these tools. Understand that you are going to go through a brand new experience. You're going to have anxiety, you're going to have stress, you might have a traumatic birth. These things happen. We can't control them, but we can have preventative things to do. We can have awareness so that when we come into these spaces, oh, okay, I'm going to be in bed a little bit longer. That's okay. I'm going to have my journaling. I'm going to have my affirmations. I'm going to have my breath work. I'm going to have my gratitude practices. It's going to help me to regulate and be with my baby and feel and show up better for myself. All right, great. I'm going to have support from someone like Rachel that's going to help me, move through the physical parts of what I'm going through and the things I need with nursing. Like, when we start to plan and actually say, like, I'm going to have the awareness for what I need, well, then you're not going to go into that dysregulation. You're not going to feel so cut off like I did. And I feel like that's so important to understand, that being regulated in your body is also going to co-regulate your baby or babies. And that's going to make
Absolutely.
massive changes in how you show up in motherhood.
Yeah. The next thing I'd love to talk about is birth trauma. And I know that term is thrown around quite a bit. And basically, what a birth trauma is essentially just any unmet expectation that you had for your birth. A lot of moms, they envision, for their birth to go a certain way, and it usually almost always doesn't go that way. And that can be a spectrum. It can be from where you wanted to have a vaginal birth and then you had a traumatic C-section, or you wanted a vaginal birth, but it didn't go exactly the way you wanted it to, but it was still a vaginal birth. So, anyway, let's just talk a little bit about birth trauma. And how breath work can really, really help moms heal from birth trauma, whatever that looks like for them. And then diving into the rest of your story after your first baby and your C section, you went on to have two more births, and just talking a little bit about how breath work really, really kind of changed the tide on those next two babies, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you said that about birth trauma, because it's true. I think when we hear trauma, even just in general with me as a certified and, trauma informed coach, when people tell me, like, I went through trauma, there's like small things they went through and there's huge things they went through. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your body's not going, oh, this is at 100 and this is at 50 and this is at 20. No, the body recognizes there's trauma, period, end of story. And it stores that trauma in the body. And so when we are experiencing something like that, we have to be real with ourselves and say, okay, it didn't go the way I planned. It didn't go the way I wanted. And that's okay. I need to release the emotions around that. I can use breath work to be able to release these stuck emotions that are in my body where I have so much shame, possibly, and guilt and sadness and anger, maybe even and frustration. I had all of those emotions around my birth center that I planned out so perfectly. I mean, I had it written out to a T, she's going to be born here in the tub. This is the room I'm going to walk into. I'm going to wear this robe. I mean, it was ridiculous. I had the whole thing written out, and it was clearly none of those things. I was lucky I could even get into a robe the next day. So, really having awareness of that and like forgiveness for yourself as well, but then using breath work to regulate those emotions and release those emotions of like, I am holding this. This is heavy on me. Like, I'm upset. I did not get the birth that I wanted. I was very upset. I was also very much in victim mode, honestly, Rachel. And I think it's important to share that because when we stay in victim mode, I think two different things happen. One, physically, the trauma in the body continues to essentially fester and manifest into other things because you're stuck and you feel like, woe is me and I can't do anything. And this is now just my, reality. And I was very much in that place. And from that place, inflammation came because I was constantly in this negative space. So my body was producing those negative chemicals and inflammation was continuing to happen all through after having my baby. And I remember my doctors looking at me and going, why have you had a baby 4 months ago and you're more inflamed than when you had this baby? And I was frustrated because I had no idea at the time. And I'm like, I don't know, you're the doctors, tell me, and they're like, I don't know, I don't understand. Now as a coach, I'm like, oh, I understand because my body was not regulated and I was producing all kinds of horrible chemicals. But I share that because I was inflamed. I had cystic acne. I had all kinds of physical body things happening in the process from being stuck in victim mode. And I think a lot of moms get to that place when we go through trauma. And so instead of going to the victim mode, let's again have awareness. Let's regulate, let's release, let's be real about the journey of what we're going through and be vulnerable in releasing and finding the right ways to let go of those emotions and that shame and that guilt and that hurt of why it didn't turn out that way, especially if you're going to move forward and have another birth. It is so imperative and important to come into a regulated state before you have that next baby and you process mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it to step into a brand new birth because that next baby is a whole new birth. It has nothing to do with that other birth. And if you let the body hold that trauma, well, guess what? That potentially could repeat and come into that next birth because our body always holds the trauma until we release it. One of my favorite books I would actually encourage your readers to check out is called The Body Keeps Score. Mm-hmm. I'm spacing on who it's by right now, but it's a very, very famous book. So you'll find it as soon as you type it in. But it's called The Body Keeps Score. It was one of the first books I read when I was going through a postpartum depression journey. It was very helpful for me because it taught me about how triggers happen in the body, how trauma works in the body, and how basically the body is keeping score the whole time. The more you stay in victim mode, the more you don't release your emotions, the more the body continues to send these chemicals through and essentially continue to manifest physically all these symptoms that we don't want, that we can't understand why we're experiencing them, and how we start to actually do the healing and reverse it. So it can be a little bit triggering, just a trigger warning, because it really walks you through how this all works. But if you're in a healing space or you're in the healing journey and you're like, I really want to understand, it was very helpful resource for me. So I encourage you to read that because that helped me to move forward into my next pregnancy and into my next birth. So should I go there?
Yes.
Okay.
I love it. I can't wait to hear it again.
All right. So I got pregnant with my second daughter, Arlie. It was right before the lovely time of COVID in 2020. I had no idea what my world was going to be like. I got pregnant. Everything was going well. I had done so much birth processing. I had a lot of different holistic people around me to help me be ready to get pregnant with my second daughter and be in a good place and no longer be in victim mode, actually be the victor and feel good about my next journey and feel empowered. And, here I am pregnant. I just had a gender reveal with all my friends and some family on FaceTime. We're so excited. We just found out she's a girl. We headed over to Mexico to have our baby moon. And I'll never forget, we were coming back from the baby moon in Mexico. And Justin and I were hearing people talk about COVID on the plane. And we had no idea like what this was or what was going on. And we're just sitting there and everyone's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's just to paint you a picture. It was like, you're kind of sitting there. It's like surreal. You're like, all right, I'm pregnant during this time. All's been going well. And like now there's this thing happening, but never in a million years did I think I was going back to California to be locked down in my home for over a year. So I go home to
Crazy.
California and, we get home. And I say that because it went to from, immediately calm to just whoosh, fear. I mean, just full blown fear. Everybody around me was in fear. Everyone's, calling me and checking on me. What are you going to do? You're pregnant. You're stuck at home. And I remember we're like wiping down all the boxes coming to the house. It was like crazy, right? It was a crazy time in the world. And I remember just all of a sudden starting to spin backwards. Like everything I had done with the work was starting to like literally spin out of control. And it was like, wait, why can't I take my thoughts captive? Why can't I get grounded? Like, why am I spinning? What's happening? Now I have a toddler. Now I have my husband at home because he can't go to work. And I'm losing my ever loving mind. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, like this can't be happening. And I remember getting in the tub and crying and praying to God and saying, like, I've been healing. Like, what's going on? Why am I in this space? And I remember him saying to me, you have to deeper surrender. You have to heal more. You have to like stop pretending that you're doing the work, but like actually surrender it to me and trust me to do the healing with you. And I was like, okay, I thought I was doing that, but I guess not. And I am someone who likes to take control. So guilty. I'm sure there's other people listening here that do too. And I guess I was taking control of a lot of what I was going through with my first daughter. And so God said, you got to surrender this to me. So I said, okay, well, what does that look like? And he basically led me to learning how to do deeper breath work. So I hired someone online during pandemic times and I started learning breath work deeper online, how to drop even further into the body. I experienced this honestly life-changing session when I got online. They took me through how to release trauma in my body. It was a much deeper like hour session where I was really coached how to not only regulate my nervous system, but to really release my emotions in a healthy way. And man, did I release 20 pounds of weight of emotions in that session. And I walked out and I said to my husband, wow, I feel like a new person. Like I feel like I can actually move forward now in this pregnancy. And that was life changing for me in that moment. So fast forward, I continued to do these sessions all through because I wanted to be equipped and feel good in a crazy time in the world that I could continue forward with my pregnancy and being at least, showing up as a thriving mom for my toddler and, doing all these things. Right. So fast forward continues to get crazier and crazier in the world. And I'm just finding more ways to breathe and be calm and use my exercises to keep myself grounded. I remember my doctor telling me that my husband wouldn't be able to come in to the
Delivery
hospital with
room.
me because they had removed spouses and partners from, which is just no, you want to talk about
Barbaric.
trauma. You want to talk about trauma. Um, and I remember just being devastated, but I remember praying and God saying, like, just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep trusting and keep breathing. And so I did. I remember walking out of there and crying and going home, getting in the bathtub and doing a breathwork exercise and releasing the fear and releasing the anxiety and just moving forward. Well, fast forward to when I went into labor with Arlie, which was 42 weeks on the nose, which of course everybody in the medical system knows is like quote unquote late. They were constantly calling me, trying to get me to come in earlier and let's induce. And I'm like, no, no, no. I want to let my body do it this time. I want to like really trust. I trust. And they were like, all right, well, we've done all the testing, like baby's fine. If you're going to really continue to be stubborn, we'll let you stay home. So let me stay home. And so I go into labor. Thank God the week I went into labor, they changed the rules for my husband to be there. So he was able to be at my birth. It was such a blessing. And I, get to the hospital and I'm laboring and my body is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. And by the way, I was laboring at home for quite some time at first too, because I wanted to really just breathe and meditate and be just with God in my home and let myself, get to a space of not being in fear, to be honest, before I went into the hospital. So I stayed home for as long as I could to just get centered and to feel like, okay, I can do this. Like, I know I can do this. And I was laboring at home, all was progressing. And then I got to a place of almost transition, and my doula said, "You got to go to the hospital." And so we went to got in the truck and we went to Cedars Sinai in California, and we got there, and I continued to labor, and all was well. And for hours, everything was great. And my doctor was like, "Okay, wow." He was kind of shocked. He's like, "All right, we're doing great. So VBAC is looking good. Vaginal birth after C-section." He's like, "We're gonna go for it." And all of a sudden, shortly after he said that, my alarm on my machine was going off, and I had a slow drip epidural. And so he's like, oh, what's going on? He looks and he's like, oh, you're spiking a fever. And I'm like, what? And I felt fine. And he's like, well, you're spiking a fever. And if you're spiking a fever, then baby could be spiking a fever. And I'm like, oh no. And he's like, all right, let's just like move this along. And as long as like, you're fine and nothing spikes with her heart rate, like we'll keep going. So my alarm keeps going off and he starts kind of telling me like we need to make things happen. I need you to progress so we can get to having baby, otherwise we may have to make other arrangements. And I knew what that meant, and I remember when he said that, I was like, no, I did not come this far to go into another C-section. Like, I did not. And I looked at my husband and I said, please kick everybody out. I need to have a moment. I kicked the nurses out. I kicked the doctor out. Thank God they listened. They left. They gave me space. I took my AirPods, put them in my ears. I started listening to one of my fear releasing playlists that I had, which I highly recommend to all mamas. You have something you are listening to be centered, even if it's not a crazy time in the world. You just want to be centered and grounded in your birth, whatever that looks like. And so I was listening, and I was tuning in, and I was doing my breath work while I was there. And next thing I knew, and this may sound crazy, but I want to take you guys through a journey. I felt like I was no longer in my body. I felt like this true out of body experience. I was looking down at my body and I could see I was there in the hospital, but I wasn't feeling in my body. And then next thing I knew, I saw like beautiful pink and purple swirls, and I felt like I was in the heavenly realm. I felt like I was truly just being held by heaven. And I heard God speaking to me, and I heard him say, like, I need you to breathe. I need you to trust me. Like you said, you were going to trust me. You have to trust me. And I was like, I'm trying. And he's like, no, you can't try. You have to trust me. And I just said, okay, what do I do? I was in full surrender. I'm like, what do I do? And he said, breathe. And as he said it, it was like he breathed life into me. And I was like, okay. And I went, and I took this really deep breath. And next thing I knew, I felt myself fall back into my body as I took this deep breath. And I heard my doctor say, push, we're there, push. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is happening. It was surreal. And I start pushing, and he got the vacuum to help assist. And next thing I know, here she is, 9 pounds, 3 ounces on my chest. Everybody is in shock and awe. I am like, just can't even like process. And there she was. And it was such a miracle in so many ways. And you want to talk about going from victim to victor, from a birth trauma to this beautiful redemption. It was so amazing. And I know it was only possible because of God, but I know a huge part of that was the fact that I regulated my nervous system because of the fever, because of probably also trauma in my body from my first daughter. Even though I had processed so much emotionally, my body physically was still holding on to that story and that trauma. And Arlie got stuck very similarly when we weren't fully progressing. And that was what they shared with me afterwards, is like, hey, when you had the fever, like she was getting stuck. She was, getting to that spot where we're like, oh boy, I don't know what's going to happen. And I believe now all the coaching and training I've learned, it's because my body was remembering from Amelia a few years back. And the reason she was able to come through is because God reminded me, you have to release this trauma. You have to release this stress and anxiety. And because I was in the breath, the body released. The nervous system said, all is well, the body is safe, let the baby come through. And she did. And I believe, had I not done that, we would have been in a different story. And so I find it so empowering, but also so powerful to share with other moms that, like, this is the power of your body, and this is the power of your breath, and how we can change the way the body operates when we get into that state of homeostasis, which we spoke about in the beginning of your show.
Just incredible. I'm floored every time I hear it.
Thank you.
Do you want to share with your third baby kind of how that
Yeah,
one went as
sure. So
well?
absolutely. Yeah.
It
So
just gets better and better and
yeah.
better.
Yeah, get better and better. Exactly. So 2022, we're now living in Tennessee. I've now had the C-section to the VBAC that I was told would never happen. And when I got pregnant with my son, which I didn't know he was a boy until we had him, but my son Abel, I knew I wanted to have a home birth. And my husband was like, I don't know, the VBAC was kind of iffy. And I'm like, trust me, I am now, by the way, I got certified after having Arlie in the hospital. I knew that was where my calling was. I knew I was going to be a certified breathwork coach. So I got certified and started getting trained. So by the time it was 2022 and it was time to have Abel, I was already certified and I was already a coach. So I knew I was going to have him at home and I was going to use breathwork to help me. And it seriously did. I, had him at home and I had another body issue. I had another, I believe, still trauma in the body. I'm honestly actually still trying to figure that out for myself and my journey. But he got stuck very similarly when I was in the tub and I was almost there, and he kind of stopped progressing. And my midwife said it was like turtling. She could see he was going back, and she was like, "Okay, you know what? Get out of the tub." And so I was in full surrender because we were like right there, and he was coming. And she goes, "Get on the couch," and I got on all fours. And she was like, "Okay, just like breathe and let me work." So I just started doing my breath work and I started praying. And I remember just being like, "Okay, whatever I have to do, God, like just let him come through, help me release him." And she got underneath me, and he had shoulder dystocia, so she had to unhook, and then he came right through. But I anchored in and I surrendered, and I got on that couch and I started doing the breath work the minute she told me to just let her do her job. And I think if I had locked up and had gotten freaked out that he was getting stuck and that something was happening, it could have been a whole different story. And I think it's very easy, of course it is, for us as moms to get nervous and get anxious and get stressed out about anything. Even when we're moms now, I have a 6 and a 4 and a 2. Like, I have moments, but I have to remind myself when those moments happen, take a few deep breaths, center, regulate, get with God, start to like calm yourself, find this homeostasis, because that's where our intuition is. That's where our discernment is. That's where we can actually move forward and make the right decision with God and not be stuck in the fear that is not of God's, and then maybe make a decision that could change the trajectory of what we actually want. And I think that's really important to voice here. So yeah, I had my first home birth, my son, in 2022, and he's named Abel because one of those words in of course it's biblical, but when you look up his name, breath is one of the terms to go with Abel. So that was why we chose Abel. And yeah, it was amazing. I never would have thought I would have had it, to be honest, but I also knew deep down that I could do it because I'd been so empowered from my VBAC and seeing what breathwork had done.
That
So
is so
yeah, that's
cool.
why I'm so passionate about sharing this work and coaching moms and parents to see, like, this is not just breathing. This is truly, life
Life
changing
changing.
work. It is, it's life changing. And when we do it and it compounds, it's massive, because it's one thing to do it a little bit here and there. That's great. But I always encourage everyone, like, if you could just do it a few times a day or even once a day for, 3-4 days during the week, I promise you by the end of that week, you're going to feel like a different person. Then a few more weeks later, you're going to feel like a really different person. By months later, and I'm telling you now, 7.5 years later, I'm like, wow, I'm a whole different person in the best way possible, because you thrive in mind, body, and spirit. And I know everybody feels stress and chaos and anxiety, especially as parents. And I feel like this is also another way to thrive as a parent and teach your children, because I teach my children how to breathe and be centered and find their grounding. And it helps them to regulate and release their emotions in a healthy way. And I feel like if you regulate your household and they co-regulate with you, now you have a thriving household. Now you guys can communicate and work through and, move through whatever it is that everyone is going through, because we're always going through something with our children.
Yes. On the daily.
On the daily.
Yes.
By the minute.
By the minute. So, how have you seen breath work help others that you know? Do you have any specific stories to share? Kind of like your birth story. Do you have any
Yeah.
stories with any of your clients or anything like that you can share with
Absolutely.
us?
Yeah, gosh, I have so many amazing stories. But one that comes to mind, that one of my clients gave me permission to share her testimony because she was so powerful, is her name is Ariana, and she was a mom who was actually in a abusive relationship. And I actually had no clue about this when I took her on as a client. I just knew she was stressed out, she was anxious, she had a young daughter, and she was in survival mode. And she came to me and said, I need to find peace. I need to release stress. I need to not be so stressed out with my daughter. I need her to not be so stressed out. And I need to figure out why I'm not thriving in life. So we just started working on her, holding her captive, her thoughts captive, and doing the breath work. Because that's something I work on. Is it's not just breath work with me. As you mentioned, I do somatics, which means soma means body. We get into the body deeper. And then I also help you with the acceleration, subconscious rewire, where we are taking captive of your thoughts and we are changing them back to godly thoughts. And so it's important for the process process to really move you through. And so with her, that's what we did in deep sessions and deep work. And as that was happening, she started reaching out to me and saying to me, I have to be honest with you, I've been in an abusive relationship with my husband, and I didn't realize it was abusive until we started actually doing this nervous system regulation work and rewiring my thoughts, where I started to realize that this isn't healthy and this actually shouldn't be happening to me. And she removed herself from that marriage. And obviously, I don't, advocate for divorce, but in this situation, obviously, it was necessary. And she now has a brand new job. She is a thriving mother. Her daughter is thriving. She is healthy. She's no longer, she was also smoking. She no longer smokes. She has completely changed her mind, body, and spirit and the way she shows up because she feels worthy. Not only does she have no more stress and anxiety at the level she had before, she's actually thriving. She's not in a relationship that's unhealthy for her. And I think it's wild to me that she didn't see that she was being abused. But I also understand that when we are in that fight or flight, when we are in that functional freeze, we are just surviving and we do numb out and we don't realize what we're doing. Like when I think back to my journey with work, like I didn't realize how numbed out I was. When you're in it, you're in that tunnel vision and you just do and do and do to survive. But when you start to regulate, you start to come out of that fog and then you see like, wow, what's going on? And that's what happened to her. It was like, now I have no more stress. Now my anxiety is lowering. Now I'm in a relationship I shouldn't be in. Like I need to get out and I need to thrive. And now she's thriving and she's moved. She has an amazing job and she's got such a different life. And I'm so happy and proud for her. But those are just, one example of what happens when you choose to regulate. I have moms of mine who've had traumatic births for their first birth, and then they go on to have a VBAC and they have a peaceful birth and a happy birth because they were doing the breath work, and they have a wonderful postpartum experience, and it's a completely different story for them the second go around because they've learned how to work with their nervous system. I've had even men come to me and say afterwards that now they're showing up differently for their wife and they no longer have the stress in their marriage and they can communicate what they need. They didn't even realize that they were holding back emotions because men are so good about never sharing their emotions. And so I have all different examples of people now thriving in their lives or reversing inflammation. And even I have a mom right now in one of my group programs, and she is pregnant with her third. She has two children. And she said to me the other day, it was so beautiful. She goes, for the first time, not only am I present with my kids, but I'm no longer feeling like I'm in survival mode and like waiting for the next shoe to drop. Like I'm actually enjoying my pregnancy and enjoying my children, and I can communicate better to my husband, and I'm sleeping better. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what a gift, like that you are feeling this and experiencing this every day. Like that's what we're supposed to experience, right? But life happens and we react to life. And what our nervous system regulation helps us do is we're no longer reacting. We come into this place where we start to learn how to be an observer of our lives, and we learn how to respond and communicate accordingly. But the reactionary, the fight or flight, the fear, that all starts to dissipate. And fear, I don't know if you guys have heard, but fear is false evidence appearing real. Not the same as danger, obviously, but fear is false evidence appearing real because our mind is telling us one thing, our thoughts are telling us another, and we're creating a story before it's even actually happened. And so if we can reverse engineer that and start to regulate, we can actually take that away and then start to bring in actual blessings and miracles, which is what I experienced, obviously, with my VBAC.
Yeah. What does your personal daily practice look like with breath work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I, of course, like I said, I have three little ones, so I don't have all the time in the world in the morning. So when I get up, I usually, to be honest, I'm usually my Bible first. I look at a few verses, I go through, do a little bit of journaling and meditating on that. And then right from there, I breathe into that. So I'll take about 3 to 7 minutes to just kind of do some deep breathing, depending on what I'm feeling. If I'm feeling more anxious and stressed, I'll use certain holding breaths to help me release it. If I'm just feeling like I want to be grounded, I might just take some deep inhales and some deep exhales. Just kind of depends on where I am that day. I take a body scan and really get very aware and very honest with myself of what I'm feeling so I can move through and release. I then get in my mirror, I do some affirmations, and then I get ready for my day. And then usually I get with my kids and we do a little bit of prayer and worship, and then we do a little bit of breathing, and then they do their affirmations in the mirror. And that's usually how we get our day going, to be grounded before we start anything. That's before I look at my phone. That's before I look at emails. I've really learned not only to take captive of my thoughts, but to take captive of like what I'm going to do in the morning to start my day. I no longer let myself be bombarded with phone calls and emails and, just the world. I really start outside of the world and then later bring the world in. And sometimes it's only 10 minutes in the morning, but it really helps to ground and reset before I actually start to get into a filled day, especially in this holiday season. And then usually throughout the day, like for example, today in the afternoon, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So I took a step away and I did a few grounding breaths just to let myself reset and just kind of calm. I was doing it during lunch while I was making sandwiches because it was chaos in my house. So sometimes it's multitasking and I'm just making sandwiches and I'm when I'm just, doing my breath work while I'm making the food. It's funny when I do that, my kids know, they like sit down, they're like, oh, mom needs a minute. And, and sometimes they'll follow me. Sometimes they'll just sit and color and wait for me. And then I fed them lunch and then I'll do it again tonight before I go to bed. And usually at night is where I anchor in deeper, where I can get deeper in prayer and in breath work and in worship and do what I do to really ground and recenter and root in with God before going to sleep so I can reset to start my day.
That's awesome. Can you talk about breath work like we're talking now? Let's talk about it, how it relates to family, kids, and couples. So
Yeah.
how can you use breath work as a tool for the whole family?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, I talked about earlier how when you are breathing for yourself and you're regulating, you're co regulating your household because they're receiving your calm, they're receiving your stillness, your grounding, and it's rippling to them because everything is energy around us. And so, if think about you go into a room, right, and someone is speaking and they're captivating you, you're captivated by that energy, you're captivated by what they are presenting to you. And if you walk into a space and you feel like, oh, I don't want to be here, and this doesn't feel good, right? We all know that feeling. It's like, oh, get me out of here. I don't know why I don't feel good, but like my intuition's telling me not to be here. My discernment's saying I don't feel good. It's the same idea in your home. When you're not regulated and you're, in chaos and your nervous system is in fight or flight, your family is feeling that. Take a notice next time in your house when you're feeling chaotic. What's going on with your child or your children? Are they in chaos? Because most likely they are. Is your potential husband also in chaos? Like everyone feeds off of each other. So especially you as the mother, you need to regulate and get grounded. You need to get centered so everyone else around you can co-regulate. And then where it gets fun is like I'll encourage my family, like we'll sit at dinner and we'll do a little gratitude practice after, we bless our meal and we'll say what we're grateful for that day and we'll talk about it. And then sometimes we'll take a few deep breaths afterwards, and I encourage families to just practice together doing that a few times, during the day or even once during the day. Or if somebody has a big emotion, that we all step away together and we take that breath together and we talk about it instead of just going back into the chaos and, oh, why are you screaming and what's happening? It's like that's the easy reaction because that's what we all do. And we've kind of been programmed to do that. And so there's no shame or judgment around it. But how can we take that captive and become aware and say, all right, you're having a moment. Let me sit with you and let me breathe with you. Let's do this together. Let's move through these emotions together. And then let's talk about what happened. So now we can regulate the household. So simple things like with my Arlie, my 2020 baby, she is the most stressed out, the most anxious child because I think she felt the trauma of 2020. God bless her. I think all babies did during that time. And so her nervous system, I noticed, is just it's more heightened. It's gotten a lot better because I've done a ton of work with her, and I got certain supplements helping her, but like she definitely has struggled the most with her nervous system, being real. And so she is someone who continuously teaches me how to ground and be present because when she spins out, perfect example this morning, she was screaming for no reason. And I walked over and I was like, what's going on? Why are we screaming? And I got down to her level and she was like, and I'm like, okay, it's okay. You can't say it right now. That's fine. I'm like, let's breathe together. Let's breathe together. And she likes to get silly. She's my silly child. So I'm like, let's breathe. And so we start pounding on our chest, which by the way, this is your vagus nerve, the largest nerve that connects to your nervous system. So if you want to calm the body, you can kind of just beat on your chest and it'll start to calm it down. Then you can take those breaths with it. We joke and call it the monkey breath because she, loves monkeys and we'll just, you hear that vibration. But even if she's not fully breathing and I'm just doing it with her to help her regulate, all of a sudden she starts to calm to the center. And now she can start to tell me what's going on. Now her brother hit her on the head and, all this good stuff that's been happening while I walked away. And now she can actually come from that place of safety and share with me, what is happening. And so I encourage families, like even just simple things like that. If you're not ready to breathe, hum together. Humming regulates your nervous system. So does snapping. Like there's a lot of different things we can do that I teach somatically to get into the body if you're not wanting to just breathe, or if you're wanting to incorporate both. Everybody's different. But I know there's some children who get reactionary to first when you tell them to breathe. So then don't go to the breath first. Make it fun. Have them pound on their chest and get into their vagus nerve without them realizing it. To give them a flower and tell them to smell it. They're breathing. They don't realize that they're actually taking that deep breath because they had to inhale to smell the flower, smell this cookie I made, whatever it is, right? Like just incorporating the breath, incorporating the body without actually making it feel like it's a to-do, and actually being playful as a family will actually help you move through a lot easier. And you'll start to make it more of a practice because you'll be like, oh, this is helping. And I actually enjoy this way better than the screaming and the chaos. And so that's what we do here. And of course, it's not perfect, but there's a lot of times where it really helps. And I see a lot of families thrive when they do these little simple things to help their kids and encourage them with these tools.
That's awesome. So let's say we have a new mom listening, and she's interested in your services. Can you talk a little bit about your offerings, where to find you, all the different fun things you're doing, and then also like how soon someone should be looking into your services?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So thank you so much, first off, for listening to my story. I hope it was helpful and inspiring, especially for moms or new moms. You are amazing and you've got this. And when we regulate our nervous systems, I truly believe we can move from surviving to thriving wherever we are in our motherhood journey. So I encourage you to think about that. And so, yeah, well, ways you can work with me and find me. So I'm on all socials at Ali Levine Design, ALILEVINE. DESIGN, excuse me, Ali Levine Design. My website is just alilevine.com. I would say if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little bit excited and empowered and encouraged, I have a free gift. I know I gave to you, Rachel. It's a link that's it says like Flowdesk/free gift. That's my newsletter. I don't spam, by the way. If you opt into my newsletter, you will get my beautiful heavenly free PDF guide of a breathwork teaching that I put together. It's really simple, but really powerful. It really excites me because everyone that does it tells me they feel so good. There's some journaling prompts in there. And it's just a great way to kind of get into starting the basics of learning my teaching. And then you can also see in there how to connect with me. There's a calendar link to book a call with me, a free consult to chat. My app is in there, which is Breathe and Be with God. Highly recommend if you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I want to skip ahead and I want to just start doing this and I want to get guidance, download my app. It's free to download. It's just Breathe, BREATHE, and the letter capital B, and then just with W, and then God, God. And you'll see it when you look it up. It's on App Store as well as online. And you can subscribe if you would like to get my teachings. I have over 31 teachings on there when it comes to breath work, meditations, kids' breaths, affirmations, and even community. And I coach you in there. So if you're not wanting to work one-on-one with me yet, or maybe, for financial reasons, you want to keep it simple, you can get in there very inexpensive and get coached by me. And then also use the breath work to continuously remind yourself to drop in daily and have that support, whether it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes a day, up to an hour. I have all different ways to get in there and just drop in through your breath and connect back. And then if you do want to work with me, book a free consult call and get on a call with me and let's chat about what you're going through, what are you experiencing as far as, when you want to reach out to me. I would say that's up to you. If you feel like right now you're listening and you're like, oh gosh, that's me, like I'm so stressed out, or I went through trauma in my birth, or maybe I just feel so not regulated right now and I need support, let's talk. Let's get on a call. Let's hear what's happening and let me help you talk about what you're going through so I can see what would be in alignment for you. I have a few different ways you can work with me one-on-one or in one of my groups, and we can talk about what would support you deeper in your journey to regulating your nervous system, as well as somatically dropping into the body to release that stress and possibly even that trauma.
And also, you're one of the kindest, most non-judgmental people I think I've ever met. You're just a really safe person. So I think you're
Oh,
an
thank
awesome
you. Well, that's my
resource for these
job. I tell
families. Yeah.
everybody, I appreciate you for that. I tell everybody that's my job as a certified and trauma informed coach. And I would just say that to anybody listening, whether you work with me or not, please make sure when you go out there, if you try breath work, you find someone who is bringing safety to the space, who is trauma informed and is aligned with your values. I'm faith-based coach. I actually got baptized here at our church here in Tennessee this year. I think it's really important to understand that this is a mental, emotional, spiritual journey when you choose to step into it, especially when you do a deeper healing session, maybe not 3 minutes in, but when you're doing a deeper healing and you want to make sure you're in safety, you want to make sure your coach is aligned and is also going to voice to you about body trauma and is going to be paying attention to what you're going through so that you don't go into fight or flight and you do feel safe moving through the experience. And so I appreciate you saying that about feeling safety because that is literally my number one job as a coach is to make sure you feel safe and seen and heard. So yeah, just come talk to me. I love to connect with people. If you're not ready to book a call, jump in my DMs, say hi, subscribe to my newsletter, get into my world. I do live events as well. I, do different types of fun things. We're going to be planning something I know soon
Hmm.
for moms, which I'm super excited about, some kind of workshop. And I do have some retreats coming in 2025 you can inquire about as well. So yeah, lots of ways to work with me and connect. I would love to help you and support you in moving from surviving and thriving because you deserve to thrive, mama. And that goes for all parents and caregivers listening. You deserve to thrive in your life. I truly believe we are designed by God to thrive in mind, body, and spirit. And I believe it starts with the breath.
Yes. I will list all of your resources in our show notes so that people can find you pretty easily. You have a pretty large Instagram following as well, close to 200,000, I believe, which
I
is
mean, I think I now have
amazing.
195,000 because to be real, I spoke out a lot on different things. And so people decided to unfollow. It's okay. I got to speak for God. And when God calls me to speak, I gotta be obedient. And, some people don't like that and that's okay. But if you're all for that and aligned, then great. We will get along just great. But yeah, I mean, I have a big following. Please don't let that intimidate you. That comes from, just so you guys know, from Hollywood and from when I was a celebrity stylist and all the work I did. This is all my followings, my platforms you see are from years of my journey and my ever evolving many lives I feel like I've lived. But they're all here to serve and they're here to be of impact. And really, they're God's platform. So I just show up and share what I need to share.
Again, you're one of the most humble, sweet people ever.
Thank you. Well, I'm so honored to
So
be with the community.
yeah. So as we end our podcast today, I would love for us to do a breathwork session
Yes,
together if you would
let's.
like, if you could guide us in one.
Absolutely.
And I think you mentioned the last time we talked, to disclaimer, if you are driving, to make sure you pull over.
Yes,
Please do
thank
not do
you.
this while driving. And
Yes,
I'm going to turn off my mic so you don't hear me breathing.
yes,
But yeah,
absolutely.
I'll let you take over and we can do a little breathwork session together here.
Absolutely. I would love to. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you for that. So, absolutely. So, if you are driving, come back to this later, save it, come back another time. It is not safe because we are in a heightened state. We're bringing more oxygen into the body quickly. So, we don't want to be driving. So, at least pull over, please. And if you're, for whatever reason, holding heavy machinery, which I know sounds weird, but if you're holding something heavy, also please don't. And I recommend you sit down or lay down. I don't recommend you standing, especially if you're pregnant, because you will potentially feel a little bit of light headness because of the bringing more oxygen to the body. There might be a more, lightheaded feeling. Also, I want to talk about with being trauma informed, there is something called tetany, which is when you are basically experiencing your fingers might feel a little tingly. They might even feel a tiny bit of, I don't want to say cramping, but they feel a little bit like they're kind of squeezing. Your toes can feel the same. That is just because we're bringing more oxygen into the body and the blood is flowing that much quicker. And so it's just known as tetany. It's totally normal, totally safe, but just a heads up. And I want to also say you have full body autonomy, meaning if you feel weird or it feels too much, stop what you're doing, stop the breathing, come back to your natural breath, center, find a space on the wall to fix yourself on, to calm yourself back down, and come back to the breath, and your body will start to recenter and you'll come out of the breath work. It's that simple. So just know that. All right. But if everyone's ready, let's breathe together. So go ahead and either close your eyes or just find yourself a centering place on the wall to stare at so you can just kind of start to zone out. I want you first to just roll your shoulders back. Give yourself a little heart massage. I like to say, just open the shoulders, open the body up a few times, and then give yourself a couple head rolls and neck rolls. And just let's drop in here because let's be honest, I'm sure everybody's holding something right now. So just let it go. Yeah, good. Now that you're dropped in, just take a natural deep breath in and release, sigh it out. Again, natural deep breath in and release. We're just going to start with just inhaling and powerful exhale like an O. Deep inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And just continue that for a few minutes here. I want you to start to anchor in and just think about what you're breathing into right now. What is your prayer? What is your intention? I'm going to just set an overall one for peace for all of us, but go ahead and just breathe in. If you need peace, if you need joy, if you need just comfort, more love, whatever it is, I just want you to breathe that in. And then I want you to exhale and release and let go and surrender to God. Whatever you are holding, even if you don't know, just release it, giving you that permission to release. And deep breath in, bringing that peace to the body, and exhale out. And we're going to start to move into what's known as a 4-7-8 breath. It helps with releasing stress and anxiety very deeply. We're only going to do a little bit, but I want to share it with you. So we're going to take 4 inhales in the nose softly. Don't feel like you have to do this quick. You're going to take 4 inhales. So it's going to be 4 inhales into the nose. You're going to start to kind of feel your belly expand and fill up as you take these deep inhales in. That's totally normal. You want your belly to come out and fill the belly with air. And as you do, breathing more into that peace, more into your intention and your prayer. And then you're going to hold this for just 7 seconds and just connect to your heart while you hold this. And just center with your heart right now. Center with God's love, God's peace. Just center into your heart right now for 7 seconds. And then we're going to exhale out for 8. We're just going to do this a few times. So 4 inhales in. And then hold for 7. Connecting to your heart deeper. So important to connect to your heart right now. And let that exhale out for 8. And really release all you're holding. Just 2 more times. 4 breaths in when you're ready. Let that belly come out and expand with your breaths. Let it expand your intention and your prayer here. And hold for 7. And release deep for 8. And once more, I'm going to encourage you to really build these next 4 deep, beautiful filled oxygen breaths. 4 in. Fill that belly up. Feel that expansion. Beautiful work. Feel that peace and hold and connect to your heart. And when you're ready, deep exhale out for 8. Let it all go. Slowly before opening your eyes, I want you just to take your hands in front of you and rub them like you're in prayer. Just rub them together. Create some warmth. It's a somatic exercise. Just create some warmth. Take that warmth and put it over your heart for me. And just feel this gratitude, feel this connection with God's presence, this peace. Just connect back to your heart once more. And take a deep breath in and sigh it out. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes, roll your wrists, wiggle out your toes, and come back to the space. And that's just a mini drop in for a few minutes. And this is how quickly you can recenter, come into your heart, come into your breath. And how are we feeling?
I feel amazing.
Yay.
Very
And that's how
relaxed.
simple it is. And that's the thing. It's like this is within us. And it's almost silly that we are not doing this on I actually get frustrated. I'm like, everyone needs to be taught this no matter where they are. And especially in schools, children need to learn how to do this on the regular because if we were all doing this, could you imagine how the world would be? We would live in a totally different world because people would know how to not only be regulated, but to find peace and move their emotions and their trauma in a healthy way and not be in stress and anxiety. And of course, we're all going to go through stressful things. That's life, right? Trials and tribulations. But we can come back to this homeostasis. We can come back to this presence and come back into our heart space and breathe deep. So I encourage
Love
you
it.
all to do that. And I hope I can be someone who guides you if this aligns for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of your awesome information today. Thank you for making the world a better place. I just love you so much, adore you, and thank you for all that you do. I'll definitely link all of your resources here on the show notes, and I really hope some of our moms will reach out to you for some help
Yes,
because
I
you're
look
awesome.
forward to connecting with all of you. So
Yeah.
thank you. Please come say hi and reach out. And thank you, Rachel. And thank you for all the work you're doing for moms and parents. It's truly amazing. So thank you for having
Thank
me.
you. Thanks, Allie. Hope you have a great night. If you loved what you heard on our podcast today, don't forget you can learn even more with our new Newborn Care 101 online video course. This course is taught by me, a newborn registered nurse expert, and covers all kinds of newborn education, including swaddling, diapering, bathing, breastfeeding, how to use your breast pump and car seat, sleep training, and much, much more. You also get free access to our online course community, which gives you direct access to me, Rachel, for any newborn questions along the way. Our podcast listeners get a special discount, so make sure to use coupon code PODCAST in all caps at the checkout. The link to purchase this course is in show notes below. Thanks so much and have a great day. Although I am a nurse, I am not your medical provider, and any information from me is purely educational and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a professional for your particular situation before making any decisions. My opinion about any brands we mention on the podcast is based on my personal experience and is not an endorsement about the suitability of any products for your particular need.